What? Welcome to another Grit and Grime basketball podcast. I'm your host, as always, David Sagoe, here with Thomas Arnal. Oh, come on, man. The timing was off.
It's never off.
Jose Garcia Vidal.
Hola.
And got a pause for sirens. And Michael Downey.
Shush.
Once again, we are brought to you by our sponsors, www.dateamericanwomen.com. They have been matching Brits and Americans for over 10 years and have a member base of over 30,000 members.
Nice.
Get yourselves on there and start an international relationship where the women love British men. So, with that, we go from happy times to sadder times. The legend, NBA legend Elgin Baylor, passed away. Was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday. Sad for one of the great scorers ever in the NBA, ever in basketball. To go, Laker legend. I believe he was part of the team that won in 1972. Yes, 1972. But I believe the legend has it he never went to pick up his ring because he was injured during the win streak and didn't play during the playoffs. So he never felt like he was a part of that championship team. But he basically helped keep the franchise afloat early on before Jerry West got there, and then when Jerry West got there, they made multiple finals but couldn't get over that Celtics hump until that very year. It's not 72. What am I talking about? It's 68.
Yeah.
It's 68. It's 68. Shame on me and my Lakers knowledge. Yeah, but legend in the game. One of the first big forwards. Sorry, not power forwards. He sort of paved the way for the likes of Dominique and Carmelo Anthony and players like that. He had that sort of in-between game where he would use his body and his strength to beat you, and also knock down shots. Hella athletic too. Great player.
For that era, he was crazy athletic.
Yeah, great player.
Hall of Famer.
For sure. Well, one of the 50 greatest.
Yeah. There you go.
A jacket to prove it. Yeah, so may he rest in peace. Condolences to his family. And glad he lived a long life. So we move on to the topic at hand. Today we will be discussing injuries. Been some high-profile injuries over the weekend. LeBron James has gone down with a high ankle sprain, and LaMelo has gone down with a broken wrist. So hopefully they both have speedy recoveries. But we wanted to use that as a platform to discuss other high-profile injuries that have happened this season, and then going back through history, document and profile a few injuries that have happened in the past, and then talk a bit about their outcomes. So, Jose,
just
do you want to start?
to reframe this, are we having an episode on injuries because LeBron is injured? Is that what's happening? Oh, he's such a Lakers fan. It's unreal.
But I don't think we'll talk much about LeBron though. Like he'll be all right, won't he?
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
Don't worry.
He'll be fine. Although everyone on Twitter felt like it was the end of the NBA. Oh my god, man! It's just
because it is
high.
the ratings are going to go through the floor.
Sure.
I forgot what I was going to say now. Never mind. I had something
You say
funny
Jose?
to say. It's gone.
Yeah, I can start us off, man. So I chose to I chose a player that I really enjoy watching. It's LaMarcus Aldridge. He's not injured right now, but he has been suffering a large number of injuries, and I have them listed actually since 2018. So hear them out: sore right knee, sprained right ankle, sore knee, left knee contusion, rest because the Spurs make their players rest sometimes. Illness, thigh, thumb, shoulder, that was a big one. Knee, hip, and wrist. And illness again.
All in 1 week.
Yeah, the last 2 days.
Thankfully, he's still alive. No, so he basically just suffered so many small but kind of like, how can I say, like
nagging injuries.
Yeah, you put them all together, and it's a recipe for an injured player, right? So the most recent and notorious one was the one I just mentioned, the shoulder one that he needed surgery in February last year, 2020, and then the pandemic started, so he didn't play for a long time. He didn't make it. He didn't recover enough to play in the bubble. However, even though the Spurs did not make the playoffs last year, the Spurs were playing quite well in the bubble, adapting to playing without him. So LaMarcus Aldridge is a player that has always been a scorer, right? Very solid, whose health, obviously has declined tremendously and has made him less valuable than he used to be. So we spoke about this a while ago, how there's one of I can't remember his name, the point guard in the Suns, not in the Suns, in the Hawks.
Trae Young.
Trae Young, there you go. Trae Young is just being defended by LaMarcus, and he's just like killing him.
Yeah,
it's like won't catch him ever. He's just a player that's kind of stuck in time. That being said, he really had good averages on a couple of seasons ago. So actually in 2017-18, he averaged about 23.1 points per game. And if you think about his best season back in Portland, that was 14-15, his averages were 23.4. So not far from that. That season, though, in the Spurs, when he did really well, Kawhi was injured most of it. DeRozan was still not in the Spurs. So that was one of the reasons. And he played 75 games. So obviously that helped. What LaMarcus did change is how many three-pointers he's taking. He used to take, for example, in 14-15, his best season, took 1.5 on average three-point shots per game. And last season, he took 3 per game. So double. So that's quite, and on good percentages as well. He averaged 39%. So he's not a bad shooter. What I like about LaMarcus Aldridge is he's a player that in the post is still very effective. One of the very few players that are still, relying on that post-up game. And in this day and age in the NBA, it's very hard to defend. So any player that has a little bit of a maybe 1 or 2 moves in the post, you see it with Luka Doncic all the time. He takes players to the post and he just plays there, up and under, good footwork. And that's what LaMarcus Aldridge does. He has very good fadeaway. He's an all-star. I mean, 7-time all-star, 2-time All-NBA second team, 3 times All-NBA third team, rookie first team in 2007. Unfortunately, I would love to see him play more, but his health has declined so much, and that's because many small injuries that won't allow him to continue being at a very high level. But now that we're coming close to the trade deadline, he can still bring value to a championship aspiring team.
What do you think his role is going to be from this point now? Do you think it's going to be like 6-man or?
That's the thing, right? He's never been a 6-man.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was relegated to the bench after he came back to play a couple of weeks ago, I think that triggered something that the need for a trade.
Mm-hmm.
I think yeah, he would be an amazing sixth man. A guy that comes from the bench and takes on the role and still can score 10, 15 a game. If you need him to, why not? But he needs to have the mentality to do it, right? So he needs to adapt to that.
Yeah, and probably to the system. I think for LaMarcus, you need to have that sort of system around him too. You need to have a bit of space in the paint.
Yeah, and then also play at quite a slow pace. I think he would benefit from playing at a slower pace, and I feel like that San Antonio roster, everyone else is sort of. They still have Pirtle, who's not the fastest either, but the forwards and the guards playing with DeRozan at the 4 sometimes, they play at a much faster pace than is suitable for Aldridge, and I think that's why his advanced statistics, but the team plays better without him. His on-off court numbers.
Yeah. I think that his great value and his real value comes in the playoffs. When you see his playoff averages, even on 2018-19, he averaged 20 points, but then his best season 26, 24. That's and you need you in the playoffs. That's really good. I want that, in the playoffs. So that's what he can bring to the table, and whether he comes from the bench or not. So if you need to adapt, like what you guys just said is absolutely right. Adapt the game and make it a half-court game instead of running a lot. But you're going to get the points as well, right?
Yeah, it's just, and coming off the bench also takes pressure off your ability to defend as well. If you're playing more minutes against bench units and things like that, then you're not going to get killed by all the great starting bigs in this league and the great starting guards as well that you have to switch on to and all of that stuff. Take some of that pressure off.
I mean, the Spurs is a good place for him because the way that they treat their players, how they allow, like as you said, like how they allow them to rest, like build rest into their rotations and stuff like that for when guys are starting to have issues. Yeah, man, like it's a good place for him.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think he's happy there anymore. And as his effectiveness goes down, it's just sort of run its course.
I think that's it. I think it's probably going to be a trend as we talk later on. But I think it's hard for some of these guys to deal with that sort of acceptance of I'm not the star on this team. I can't be the star on this team. So staying on the same team and still having that, it might be easier to sort of say, oh, well, I'm not the star on this new team because they've got X and Y and whatever, It might be easier psychologically to do that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And last thing, do you see positives coming out of these recent injuries for LaMarcus? Do you see him turning it around, or
I think
this is the beginning of the end?
It is definitely the beginning of the end. So it will be positive for him if he takes on a role that exactly what we just said. If he takes on a role where he compromises playing time for winning the championship, in exchange for winning the championship. So if he decides to do like a Blake Griffin move, and go to a team like that, 100%. Who wouldn't want a player like that on a minor role? So absolutely, come over, and we'll find a place for you, right? He could play in any team, just not the same minutes as he would play. On some other teams, right? So there you go.
Yeah. All right. Let's move across to someone who could have been the league's MVP with Michael Downey.
That's right. I could have been the league's MVP, but
with Michael Downey.
Bad injury back in the day.
Well, he can't hear you quite well. He's got some sort of weird device on his head. So
what league are we talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I'm sticking with the Homer theme, and I've gone with Embiid.
Clearly with that hat. Clearly.
All right, I'll get a Sixers hat. All right, Jesus. Embiid is injured again. Thankfully, he's had some recent sort of test results back that say that it's not too bad. I don't know if you guys have seen the injury.
Yeah.
It was a hyperextension of his knee, his left knee again. So there was a lot of concern. Dave, as you're saying, like he's having an MVP level season. Sixers top of the East. He's shooting 52% from the floor, 42% from three, which is just incredible for a center. Yeah. There's not many centers out there that can do that. Averaging 29.9 points and 11.5 rebounds a game. It's mad. He's having an incredible season. But the reason I was going to talk about Embiid, because it's not as serious as some of the injuries that we'll talk about, is it just brings back all of the concerns that he's had throughout his career. He missed the first 2 seasons that he could have had with the Sixers because of a foot problem. He's had injuries to this knee before, and the Sixers have always been really cautious with him. Big men especially do tend to, once they have one problem, it leads to another, it leads to eventually the back every time. So I think they're concerned about that. The guy's still super young. So that's my concern with him and how quickly he can bounce back from it. But I think, fingers crossed for me, I think it's early enough, and it's, from what they're saying, it's a bone bruise. It's not actual like ligament or bone damage. Getting back for the All-Star, for the All-Stars, playoffs.
That's what really matters. All-Star 2022.
Do you think that his season is better this year and his numbers are solid because of his maturity? Like, is that the main reason, or what is it? He's just playing better magically? Was he always this good?
Well, I think they've got a new coach. They've got Doc there, who I think has got them sort of playing well together. They've changed the team around a little bit. Maybe there was a bit of a clash with Jimmy Butler and sort of who should have the ball the most, or how the offense should be played. But I from what I can see with Embiid, he's a competitor. He whenever the playoffs is going on or anything like that, he takes it really hard when they lose and they crash out. So I think he genuinely sees it as he wants to improve every season, and he puts the work in to do that. And it was something that I was concerned about when he was injured in those rookie seasons early on, because he was on social media, he's doing this, he's doing that, and you're thinking, what are we going to get when he does start playing? Is he really going to take this seriously? But he's, mentality-wise, I think he's really got it. So I think for me, hopefully he overcomes this and he just keeps on improving.
For me, Embiid is excellent. He's the MVP front runner, or at least he was until he got injured. And I think obviously the personnel changes have helped. Having Seth Curry out there, one of the best shooters of all time, having Danny Green out there, 3-time NBA champion, also spacing the floor. I think it's just given him more room to operate, and Simmons as well, more room to operate and do what they do best. They have people there that can knock down shots, fucking Korkmaz as well. And then everyone just fits in around the stars. And then even when Simmons has been out for the odd game here, or Embiid has been out for the odd game here, Tobias Harris has stepped in and stepped up and done a really good job, as he is right now with Embiid down. But I think the biggest improvement he made was his mid-range shots. He's really knocking them down at a high clip. And what that means is there's not this big pressure on him to hit threes, maybe picking up the slack for Simmons and things like that. But they still have to respect him outside of the paint and when his back isn't to the basket. So he's become this 3-level scorer. He doesn't take many threes. I know he's shooting them at a high clip, but he doesn't take many at all. But he is this 3-level scorer that can just face you up or back you down to the post, and it just gives him this element of unpredictability, versatility on offense that he didn't have in the past, and he's passing much better out of double teams as well. That's probably helped by the spacing.
Yeah. He is great. Like the fact that he's that effective offensively, and then is still like an all NBA defensive player as well. You don't get many of these.
No, generational. Worth the wait.
Yeah, I think the biggest like long-term concern I have is just like, what is this doing to his longevity? I don't see it being like that he's gonna have like a super long career. And I mean, thankfully he's not somebody that massively relies on his athleticism. But yeah, it's concerning.
So as far as this season, how do you see it turning out? Do you think he makes a full recovery?
Champions.
Okay, yeah, say word. Book it.
It's funny wearing the hat of the team that's going to kill you in the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Turn it around. I'm curious to see what you'll be doing to that hat in a couple of months' time.
Hat is back now.
Burn it down. Well, speaking of the hat, Tom, who you got?
Hey, I went with KD, the best NBA player for the last 10 years. When not injured.
Takes.
Is he not the best player? Is he not?
You have a few top 10 lists that say otherwise.
Because he's always injured when we do those top 10 lists. So otherwise he'd be number one always, all the time. Anyway, so yeah, KD. It's a funny one, right? Because the Nets are still second in the East right now, and they're just one win back from the Sixers. So clearly, it's not impacted them as much as we thought, but the impact is lessened because they've got Kyrie and freaking Harden on their team. So that's an interesting one, really. But that's concerning to every other team in the league, because once he's back, what do you do? If they're already doing well, and keep in mind that Kyrie is not also having a full-on season at the moment. He's just playing a bunch of games and then disappears and then comes back, and then there's like, I actually did check Kyrie's injury list, and it's most of them are personal. There's none of them are actually physical at all. It's quite funny to see. But anyway, we've talked about Kyrie already before. But so and what was it? KD. So the last 10 games, and KD's missed a bunch of them. The Nets are 8-2. So clearly not missing him all that much. But I did like you guys did, and I went on to Fox Sports website to see the history of injuries. And most of them, it feels weird because it feels like KD has been missing for the last, it's MIA for like 2 or 3 years now. It's weird. He's sort of had, but he's had all these injuries. To me, he's always been in and out, but he's had the injuries that are sort of those, the shitty one that you'll get that will be out for like a week. So like sore ankles, contusions and strained calves and like wrists and stuff like that. But then he had the big one in 2019 with the Achilles heel. Back in June 2019. So that's why it feels like he's been gone, and he was literally gone for almost 2 years. Granted, the whole COVID thing, you've heard. And then he came back, and that since what was it? Since January. So he had a couple of days out because of COVID protocol. So that was him being track and traced. I don't think he actually got tested positive. I can't remember on that one, but he was in the vicinity of someone that got tested positive.
Yeah, I don't think he was. He got it in the original batch a year ago.
Yes. And then coming back from that, he had a Achilles heel injury recovery, so which is just him chilling. And then another COVID scare, and then now the hamstring, which is what I currently have. So I share one thing. I have one more thing in common with KD, 3-point shooting and.
So if you ever meet him, you have something to talk about.
Oh, we can talk. We can talk about how dominant we are offensively, and then
on Twitter.
On Twitter, and how we both suffering from hamstring injury, which is really a pain in the ass, and
and how you both hated your coaches.
No, my coach was all right. Yeah. So yeah, so the main question is that, well, the main issue with all of that is that how is the Nets going to cope, if you say cope is the right word, when KD comes back? Like, that's what, how is the rest of the NBA going to cope when KD comes back? And hopefully he's fully recovered. I really want to see that. I'm way more excited to see KD play than anyone else on that team. So so that's it, KD for me.
It's scary one there. It's interesting that because I think this was one of those injuries that initially they said he was like day to day or something like that. They didn't make it out to be this serious, and then after a few days they sort of upgraded the injury, and he's been out ever since. I think
it's
they might have
very similar,
day to day.
Very similar to AD, right?
Yes.
Which is, he was out for a week or something, and then suddenly went, it's 2 weeks, and now it's, we don't know.
Months. Yeah.
So, which is more concerning, and it happened a lot. I've seen that happening a lot in a bunch of players when it's supposed to be that tiny little thing that should be gone in a week, 10 days, and it turns into this massive headache that turns into a 3 months. You're gone for 2 months, 3 months, and then you come back never, because it's just nagging. It's just there. And
that would be the concern here, because I mean, sometimes you are conservative with your estimates, right? Like, you would do that with an Embiid, or with certain types of injury. If you know someone has a calf injury, you don't want it to become an Achilles problem, or the other chain, going up the chain, injuries that you can get from coming back too soon. But I don't think that's the case here. I think maybe it might be more serious than they originally let on.
Well, because I'm literally I'm having the same thing and talking to the physio now, and my physio was telling me that it takes about 5-6 weeks to recover from it, and then even though you come back from it, you can still it's one of those nagging injuries that it can flare up at any point. So you might think you got rid of it, but it's still there. So I'm hoping that's not going to be the case there, and that he'll fully recover from that. But it's such a it's one of those injuries. It can be like a sprained ankle. Like you think you recover, but then you come back too quickly, and then it'll be there still. But the one good thing for KD, he's quite a skinny guy, quite light. So it's not like an Embiid we were talking about before. It's just like, the guy is quite massive, and that's put a lot of pressure on his knees or the lower part of his body. That at least KD, we know that with the Achilles heels or the knees, he should be okay, with not having to carry too much weight around. Yeah. Well.
And also it's crazy when we think about KD's career, we don't ever associate him with injuries, right? Like, typically, I know lately he's been injured a lot, but he broke his foot, if you remember, for the OKC Thunder, and that was actually a really, really big injury. That's the kind of injury that has taken, like, back in the day, that could potentially be a career-ending injury. Now the technology is better; he's able to get surgery and deal with it, but he had that injury, which was actually a huge injury. Then he had the Achilles, and both times he's come back like neither injury happened. Which is great, right? Because it then means that when he has something less severe like this hamstring problem that he's having now, it's a good chance that when he does come back, he's going to be 100%.
Yeah, they start stacking up, don't they? Same, like, we just spoke about Aldridge and Embiid. So yes, I agree with Tom that he doesn't have to carry as much weight. He's not that he doesn't have the body type where it's like massive big dude. He probably doesn't get hit as much as other players, because he plays more in the perimeter, but he does get hit quite a lot actually when he drives. But the injuries can stack up, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't miss out on him playing a lot.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. But Tom, what do you think the outlook is for the rest of his season?
I think he'll be back. He just needs to be patient and take care of it. It's again, it's a nagging injury. He'll be all right. He'll be all right. I think once he gets rid of it, he just needs to be careful with the Achilles heel, not to have another mishap with that. But yeah, he's been pretty solid, like you said. He's not somebody you associate with injuries. Just take your time, make sure he's recovered fully, and then get him back on there for the playoffs, I guess. Make sure he's back. I don't know, KD is weird because every time he got back from the injury, it feels like he doesn't need time to get back into the swing of things. It's like, hey, he's 65, let's go. It's not funny.
Absolute basketball machine. Cool. So that leaves us with me, and I am going to talk about AD. See how I ran that? ABA. Hey, listen, we already mentioned the king. Now it's time for the prince, the heir.
Yeah. All right.
The heir to the throne. It's Harry.
Not anymore, actually.
So Anthony Davis has been out since March 15th. Oh no, sorry. His injury was updated March 15th. He went out in February, injuring his calf, having just come back from, I think maybe a week out-ish, with the same injury. He injured himself against the Denver Nuggets, went to drive on Nikola Jokic and pulled up, tried to walk it off, hit the free throws that were for a phantom foul that never happened, and then has been out ever since. He's going to be reevaluated, I think, on April 6th, which is 2 weeks after his last evaluation. Said he would be out a little longer. It's listed as a calf, but I think originally it was down as Achilles tendinosis. And that's an injury that's, I think, at the top of the Achilles, which is why it's listed as a calf, right? It's not on the tendon itself. But it's not as, I don't think it's as serious as tendinitis either. But it's one of those injuries that will linger and you can probably play on, but if you play through it, it won't heal. So it's a thing where originally they tried to sort of soldier through it a little bit and just manage it, which I think was silly because he would have been back sooner if they had just sat him from the start. And I think it typically takes about 3 months. If you stay off it for 3 months, it will be a full heal, full recovery. And I think 3 months from the injury takes us right up to the playoffs. And that is why I went with this injury over LeBron's injury, where it's more likely to be 5-6 weeks, depending on how supernatural he decides to be right now.
Yep.
I think this is the more significant injury just because the longer period out, and then we know that if LeBron and AD are healthy, the Lakers are in with a shout. If it's just LeBron or just AD, then it's going to be a problem, right? I think just LeBron is good for winning regular season games. I think we would struggle if we lose seeding down the West with just LeBron in the playoffs. But but with them both healthy, if AD can just make it back for the playoffs and be healthy and ready to go by then I think that the Lakers are in with a really good shout of defending their championship. But it's just so important that he's 100%.
You know what? It
What
would
is going on?
actually I would actually kind of like to see AD just miss the first round, just so we can get some like vintage LeBron.
Vintage Cavs LeBron.
Yeah.
Play 48 minutes and destroy a team.
That would actually be pretty cool.
But he would. Yeah, I mean, he would. I don't think it would be like Cavs level, like 2018. Like he picked his spot still.
Mm-hmm.
He was really, really good in the home games, and then a little bit less good in the away games, and that's why they went to 7 with the Pacers and went to 7 with the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just beating people over the head game after game after game like he used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be a similar thing this time out as well. But yeah, I mean, a vintage performance would always be fun. But I would rather a nice balanced performance with AD there by his side, you know. Yeah, and it's an injury that's lingered from the heel injury that he had in the bubble. And then he wasn't able to fully recover and start ramping up his physical strength and things like that before the season started because of the quick turnaround. Lakers playing in the finals and then having to start the season in December. So yeah, and it's what he's obviously a player that is used to having these nagging injuries, and he kind of wanted to shake that reputation. But this has come and put him down for a while. So it's just an interesting one for the current season, and then also going forwards. Like LeBron's not going to play forever. Knock on wood, unless his middle name's Dracula. Yeah. So it's important that obviously it being in and around the Achilles tendon, that the Lakers not only think about this season and LeBron's window, but also the years ahead that that AD's signed up to play for the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a very impactful and probably has the most effect of all the injuries that we spoke about, the players that we spoke. Actually, Embiid as well. Embiid is a massive part of the Sixers, obviously, but and I think KD is a massive player, but he's just not that important for the Nets because they have other two monsters there.
Exactly.
And Aldridge is obviously we spoke about him. He's a role player right now, but yeah, I mean AD has such an amazing impact in that Lakers team, so it would be great to see him back soon, hopefully. Because you know, you're a fan of any team and you want to beat any team at its best, right? So when I, for example, 2018, when the Raptors beat the Warriors, I hated that Durant got injured. I knew that the Warriors were going to win. The Raptors were going to win immediately after Durant got injured. But I also thought that they could beat the Warriors with Durant on the court, and I wanted to see that, but we didn't get to see that, right? So it doesn't matter who you're rooting for. You want to see the best teams out there playing, right?
You don't want there to be like an asterisk next to something.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about some asterisks as we step into the past. There's so many injuries that we could have come up with. I had this long list that I was writing at work. But we've chosen who we've chosen for the reasons we've chosen them. And you're going to hear from us. So if we go back to Jose, start as we started before, and we'll go around the table and talk about past injuries and their impact.
All right. So we are going to talk about Penny Hardaway, Penny Hardaway. I actually did some digging. You know, I've done research and going through many different websites, and I even went into Reddit to see what Reddit users had to say about Penny Hardaway. And one of the said he's the Derrick Rose of the 90s, right?
Right. Yes.
And actually, Derrick Rose is the Penny Hardaway of the 2000s.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
such a fun player to watch. He was a point guard that was a really good shooter. He was really good passer, more than a decent dunker, very athletic, court vision, basketball IQ off the charts. And he had two shots at a title with Shaq. One of them making it to the finals, losing against Hakeem Olajuwon on a very experienced Rockets team. And then next year they actually beat Michael Jordan in the Eastern Finals when Jordan returned. Not Eastern Finals, sorry, it was the second round.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was at the level of Michael Jordan. Many people saw him like, oh my God, he's going to be the next Michael Jordan. Obviously Kobe then became that, but he could have been a Kobe Bryant, except he played a different position. But two-time All-NBA first team, All-NBA third team, rookie first team. In his rookie season, his averages 16 points per game, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. Amazing. He unfortunately had really bad knees. And that was his problem, as many other players, not just in the NBA, around the world. Basketball is a sport that takes a toll on your joints, and Penny unfortunately didn't endure that. Fun fact about Penny is that he convinced Shaquille O'Neal to talk to the Orlando Magic and to convince them to draft him because he met Shaq when he got the part for Blue Chips.
Yeah,
and he just told this anecdote in All the Smoke in the podcast with
Matt Barnes and
Stephen
Jackson.
Jackson. Yeah. So one of the biggest what ifs, not only because of his own career, but what if he would have stayed with Shaq in the Orlando Magic, and that could have been an amazing team as well. So I would have loved them to see him play longer and more meaningful years. That's it. Like just comparing him to like, which is just putting him in the same conversation as Michael Jordan at any point in your career. You're great. So that's it for me.
Robbed of a potential Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I had a look at his numbers as well, and it's just sad when you look at the fall off. Like, he was great for 3 seasons and then just falls off a cliff, and it's sad. It's sad as hell. But yeah, he was one of the most exciting players to watch. Like, his footwork and his handle, and some of his unconventional moves. Like, he did moves back then that players don't do now. And he did moves back then that players are only starting to do now as well. He was, incredibly creative, incredibly fun to watch. And it's really sad that he got injured the way he did.
Yeah, there was one point in France, I remember growing up, that he was ahead of Michael Jordan in terms of popularity and being talked about. So it was really sad when they literally that big drop, like 3 seasons, and then he just which is funny because that's literally the player I've picked is sort of the same trajectory, but even more abrupt. But it's I remember him. This is when I started getting interested into basketball, like 93, I think. Is that when he gets drafted by?
Correct.
94.
93 started playing.
And I remember, like, literally one of the first NBA player that was like, oh wow, cool. Yeah, that was him. And like I think I remember he's like, what struck me the most with Penny is like the length of his arms. Like so long arms, and the hands also. It's like the things you could do, like just grab the ball and just go. A bit like MJ was doing, and big like Kawhi can do that, and just grab the ball in one hand and just go. Can't touch this with it. It's absolutely amazing. And defensively, also, he was a beast because he could guard anyone really. Not the Shaq though. Training couldn't do that.
Two steals per game on his rookie season.
Yeah. But again, and what you got right is the what if part of it. It's like imagine him and Shaq playing a little bit longer together.
Yeah.
And Shaq has come out and said that not that he regrets it because obviously he went on to win championships, but he does think back to making that decision, and he does feel like he left too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a point.
Shame.
I mean,
yeah.
The guys never came back, right?
Yeah. Who's next? Mike, take it away.
Yeah, sure. So slightly different take on it. I wanted to see sort of what injuries had like a huge impact on a team that was sort of destined for great things. So what I was going to talk about was Dwight Howard and Steve Nash when they went to the Lakers. It was as Kobe was moving into a new era and didn't have the team around and hadn't had the team sort of around him to really fight for a title for a little while. And then they managed, it seemed to me like they managed to pull Steve Nash and Dwight Howard out of nowhere. They got them in for the 2012-2013 season. Nash was old. Nash, he'd been through it by that point, but he was still like leading the league in assists and stuff like that. Like he was still shooting the absolute light out of it. So to have that sort of player on your team would have just been incredible. And he didn't have a ring for all the two-time MVP player in the league sort of chatter. Never had that. And yeah, that was kind of brutal. Dwight, it was his first move out of Orlando. And whilst he was at Orlando, he was just dominant. Like defensively, he got back-to-back Defensive Players of the Year. And would just jump out of the gym. It was just unstoppable, it seemed like, around the rim. So the stats, his last two seasons, not his last season in Orlando, but the season before that, 22.9 points per game, 14 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks per game. It's just ridiculous. And I think points, that was when points per game weren't as crazy as they are now. They didn't take the biggest drop off, but they went down to his one for the Lakers. It went down to 17, 12.4. And he's still averaging like 2 blocks per game. But it was like his PER went from 26 down to 19, which is kind of a huge drop off. There was lots of reasons for it. Like there was a lot of play style, and him and Kobe didn't get along and stuff like that. But it was noticeable that he couldn't do the stuff that he was doing in Orlando. The 5 out of 7 seasons whilst he was at Orlando, he played 82 games, and he was playing over 35 minutes per game all the time throughout the whole thing. And then that last season, it was 54 games, and then he actually took 6 months out whilst he had a surgery on a herniated disc in his back. And he's just never got back. He's just never got back to being the same. Even though mentally, it seemed like that's what he thought he should still be. He should still be the dominant player on each team, playing alongside Kobe and Steve Nash.
Gasol was on that team as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he already had to share the board with another big man who was arguably better offensively than him, more resources,
more skilled,
more skilled, definitely more balanced.
So it's a shame, especially for Nash. I enjoy watching Steve Nash play in the Suns. he will play, and I think we mentioned in the past the style of play that is very popular today, right? Just shoot the ball in 4 seconds in the possession. So, what a shame.
Yeah.
Is that how Nash retired? Was that his last team, right?
He had 2 seasons where he actually played in the Lakers. So the season with Dwight, where he played 50 games.
Yeah.
And then the season after, he only played 15.
Yeah.
So his was a combination, but it was mainly his back. I think he had like a fracture in his leg the season before. That basically triggered, as we were talking before, triggered all the stuff off it, and it was his back that never really recovered. But it was sort of said that whilst he started having these problems, he changed the way that he did everything. He changed his diet. He did so much sort of like rehab and like care of his body that it had huge impacts on other teammates and stuff like that. So he was a real example of how to keep playing, and I think he probably played longer than he could have. And that was one of the things that happened with the Lakers was the fandom got really annoyed because he didn't retire, and he was still on like 10 mil a year or something like that.
Yeah.
So he was taking on this spot, but he wanted to get back, and it just wasn't going to happen, you know. That last season he was like 38. So it was brutal to see them go out like that, and it was such a switch as well. It's such like a point where you just go, oh, okay, these guys are not the same now. And Dwight's still playing. Like, fair play to him. He's been through that sort of acceptance that we're talking with, like Aldridge, where he's not the guy. It took him a while.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But he's
played for a couple teams.
For a couple teams. Yeah.
But he got his redemption story by going back to the Lakers.
100%.
100%. And winning the chip. So that's my story.
And Nash, I think it was either the first or the second game of the season. A young Damian Lillard, I think he might have even been a rookie, fell into his leg and caused him a tibia injury, and that's how he missed the first like 15-20 games of the season that year. And then the Lakers team just went down and down and down and down from there. But
so I mean, like, what could it be? Can you imagine like a Steve Nash with a prime Dwight Howard? Like what he was able to do with Amare.
Even I remember just even seeing that team we knew that Nash was old, and that Dwight was probably not going to be the same. But they also had Gasol and Kobe. I remember saying like, okay, that's it. They're going to win the championship. That's it.
Well, it's funny. I had the opposite reaction. I was like,
Really?
it was a weird. Not as a hating on the Lakers, but I was like, to me, it felt like weird pieces being put together. Like I had this weird feeling they would not gel. So for some reason, I don't know. Like before he would even go on the court, it was like it felt weird to see Kobe and Nash and Gasol and Howard. I don't know. There was something off for me.
Yeah, and you turned out to be right? Because Kobe has the ball in his hands a lot. Nash is a player that likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. And then, as you said, Jose, Pau Gasol is basically a center, whether he's playing with another big or not. And Dwight is the same. Like they can't really share the floor much together. And that's why it didn't work. Pau was forced into being like a mid-range shooter all the time, which he can do, but it's not 100% of his game. Kobe likes to throw pocket passes to bigs, and Dwight likes alley-oops, and they kept not getting that chemistry right. And then Nash got injured. So we never got to see him sort of run the offense. By the time he came back, the Lakers record was so bad that Kobe was like, I'm taking over everything. and that was it. We just never got to see the team do what it could have potentially done.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're winning from the start, do Corby and Dwight even fall out?
Exactly.
Right.
And then that was the other side of things. Like, part of the reason they fell out was Dwight wasn't healthy. You said he had the back surgery. He came back in 6 months. It's normally a 12-month injury.
Mm-hmm.
He came back, like, he wasn't expected to report to training camp or anything like that. He was meant to come back during the season, like January, and he was back at training camp, and it was just why would you do that?
The Dwight period when he was eating a lot of crap also.
Yeah,
Isn't
a lot of sweets.
Yeah.
And he would have tingling in his fingers and stuff like that because sugar does stuff to your nervous system. And he was told that if he just stops eating sweets, it will stop. And he just couldn't or wouldn't stop eating sweets.
Addicted to that.
Young
Didn't
Dwight
get caught with some sort of glue on his hands in the game as well? Remember?
Yeah. Couple antics.
Oh my God.
I feel like we can do a whole episode on Dwight.
Dwight is a weird guy, man.
He is. He's a very weird guy.
Then he had a feud with Shaq where he wanted to take over the Superman title.
Yeah.
There's only one Superman, okay, we know.
And that's Henry
Shaq.
Cavill.
Yes. Actually, I agree.
But if you can imagine if Dwight had the same attitude as Nash and what Nash was doing to try and get
back on the court. Yeah. I mean, the first thing he should have done was not try and get back on the court. Like, just rest and finish out. Because I think he would have come back 100% Dwight if he'd taken the time to.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did that and then tore his labrum and played through that as well. And still led the league in rebounds.
Yeah.
Is that also the Smush Parker years? Is that what it is?
No,
what was his name?
No, that was
before.
Much sooner. Yeah,
it's before. Quality.
But yes, take it away, Tom.
All right. Let's talk about my favorite player of all time. I'm not kidding. It's not actually a joke. Brandon Roy, who had 4 great years, and then it all went to literally falling off a cliff, as we were saying before. That's like a massive sad story, actually. So Brandon Roy got drafted back in 2006 and started all well. Had the first season as a rookie, and I think he was averaging about 17 a game. Shooting almost 45%. That's all doing well. I think he got selected for a rookie game. Yeah. So did well, and then started the following season tweaking his right ankle just before the All-Star starting. Tweaking his ankle quite badly just before the All-Star game where he got selected, actually. So that can tell you how good that guy was. Season number 2, already an All-Star, averaging almost 20 a game, and playing, I think, around 38 minutes a game. So it's quite already quite a high usage guy. So, he's suffered there. And then year 3, this is when he's averaging his best stats, which is 23 a game, almost 50% shooting, which is quite good for a point guard, especially. But then he already started having, I think, a few issues there where he was all right. I think it's the year after that he actually got bad. But that year, he made the All-Star game one more time. So he got selected 3 times running. And this is when I fell in love. I think that's season 2008, 2009, because the guy was just a brain on the court.
Yeah.
A slightly less flamboyant Lillard, version of Lillard. But the way he was shooting the ball, the way he was organizing the team on the court, like being the floor general, was just outstanding. And then he was peanut butter smooth to, you watch him shoot. It's just the way he released the ball. Oh my God, just thinking about the way he released the ball, that's how nerdy I get with him. Just like his shooting form, I was just like, all day, just watch him all day.
Incredible.
He was mad. Hang on, let me just go with the awards for the season, for his career, because like I said, it's like 4.5 seasons, 4 seasons. It's like three-time NBA All-Star, so 3 years running, or 8 or 9, 10. NBA second team, NBA third team, rookie of the year. Forgot to say that. Also NBA or rookie first team. And then in college, he was absolutely mental. He was first team, best player of the year. His jersey is retired, and he's now a coach.
Yeah.
But he'll be remembered forever and ever for the 2010-2011 season, where he, after having a couple of knee injuries and getting operated on, he came back. Season number 4. For the he was there during the season, but he suffered throughout the season. Like he was in and out, and he averaged like about 12 a game that season. So it's quite a massive drop from going from 22 and 23, 22 the 2 seasons before that, dropping 10 points in a single season. He only played 47 that season, and playoff series against the Mavs, and I'm sure everyone's seen this. They were, was it game 4? Game 4, they're down by 20 with like in the middle, I think with 3 minutes to go in the third, they're down by 20, and then Brendan just goes and scored 18 in the fourth quarter. I think it's 18 points or 15 points consecutively. It's like something mad.
Ridiculous.
Just took over. I think the only one that scored another bucket was Matthews, I think. And I go, Aldridge also scored a bucket.
Marcus was there,
yeah. Marcus was there. And Batum, I think, scored a 3. But anyway, he took over and he went, "Nah, we're not doing this." And he did. And he did. He won the game for the Blazers, and it was just absolutely mental. I remember the crowd going crazy. I think I may have watched that game live. I may be dreaming, but I think it was one of the last game I watched live entirely because people were going crazy, and they won, I think, the game by 2. But they ended up losing the series in 6 games. So, but funny enough, that's one of his last game ever, almost, because after that he was about to start the following season, but then he had so many operations on his knees, and then going MRI after MRI, they realized his knees were like he was losing cartilages between games. That literally there was nothing. Like
he was
bone to bone action,
bone on bone.
Grinding. And he was forced to retire. So this last big game literally was scoring on the Mavs like a madman. He did come back in 2012, 2013 for the Wolves.
Timberwolves, baby.
Oh God, 5 games and 6 points a game. But again, he was walking like he couldn't even walk properly at that stage. So it's not. Let's discount that. It's not.
That doesn't count.
That didn't happen. All right. But yeah, it's just if you don't know who Brandon Roy is, just go on YouTube and just like
the highlights.
It's crazy. I think that the 2 things that call like loudly about Brandon Roy, that speak so loudly about Brandon Roy, one of them is that when he wasn't injured, because we know about Brandon Roy because of his injuries, but when he wasn't injured, we said earlier that Penny Hardaway was a Derrick Rose. He was like maybe better than Derrick Rose, like when it comes to athleticism, his dunks, he was just amazing. Like, oh my God. And then you just said it as well, like cartilage against cartilage. Like he was playing with excruciating pain, through pain, and he played his best basketball through that pain. So that's so valuable. It's what a player we missed out on. An unbelievable player.
Yeah, imagine his knees left him alone. He'd be I don't know. To me, he is one of the biggest what if in the entire NBA history. It's like
I agree with that.
I still catch myself going on YouTube and just googling, just going, "Hey, let's watch some highlights," because it's just I don't know. It's the way he was playing and the brain he had on him. It's just
Because can't they? I think they can like rebuild cartilage now.
Really?
I think it's one of the 3D printer techniques.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So you can grow bones again. It's a pity that he was playing in the years he was playing. Imagine that having the injuries now, he probably could have saved his career. So
it's just like I can't think of anybody that is just at a point that like at a high and then just disappears.
Right.
Cut off short. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad.
Yeah.
Maybe Rose, right?
Same.
Maybe Derrick Rose a little bit.
But Derrick Rose continued playing, like he still
came
plays
back.
today, you know.
Yeah,
And he scored 50 2 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
So
I
think
thought
Rose-
Arenas, but Arenas had other issues.
yeah.
He came back from the injury. But then also his injury is another one that if it happened today, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as a big of a problem. Same thing with
Right.
Amari Stoudemire. Like there's a lot of players, and if you go back through history, like Bill Walton and all of his injuries, a lot of those he wouldn't have had as much of a problem with today with the technology and stuff like that. It's just stuff advances, right? And we lost who we lost, but we can redeem some of these players. Like you look at Steph Curry, and if he was around in the 80s or 90s, his career probably ends. It probably ends with the state of his ankles, like. But they were able to rehab and redeem him, and he ends up having this excellent career. But bringing it back to Brandon frickin' Roy, I just remember being at university and we were sitting around and hypothesizing about who that hadn't won a scoring title will win a scoring title. And I think Carmelo's name was mentioned at the time. He ended up winning one, obviously. But my pick was Brandon Roy. I thought, he has like all the tools to get it done. He was incredible player.
Actually, there's one player that I sort of put on the same. Well, he didn't have that much impact that's big of an impact as Brandon Roy, but Jay Williams on the Bulls.
Motorcycle accident, right?
Motorcycle accident. I mean, that's more of a freak accident or something natural, but still, though, like the potential in him, that would have been again. What if? It's so annoying when that happens. Like you've got somebody with potential like that.
Yeah.
Even more so that I get triggered by players who are a bit unstable, like or not that have character issues, as in like a bit too big-headed and stuff like that, or people that throw it all away by being big mouth sort of players. But that injuries is different.
That's genuinely the issue that I like, the concern I would say that I had with Embiid.
Yeah, that's his concern. Exactly. It's like he's such a talented guy. You don't want him to go out, end it all the same way, and think, I mean, imagine. I would love to know what Embiid would have been like. Where would he be now without all those injuries? Like, where would he be? He probably had a couple MVPs, right? Maybe. Yeah, potentially.
He has the caliber. He's that caliber of player. He's got the talent for it. But that's part of it, right? Like how many people played with people. It doesn't have to be in basketball and in whatever sport where they had the talent to make it, but they didn't have the attitude to make it, right? They didn't have the dedication to make it. Like it all feeds into what makes great athletes great. It's that combination of physical talent and mental fortitude and having a good head on your shoulders and good people around you as well. Sometimes you have those two things, but the people around you lead you astray. It's
a great segue into getting people to watch Last Chance U on Netflix.
Don't do it.
Oh,
don't
wait.
So
I haven't started yet.
Well, yeah, you when you watch it, you'll see. But like a lot of what you just said is literally what these guys are going through.
Of course.
But if you've not watched it, I highly recommend it because it's one of the best sports documentary I've seen in a while.
I mean, it does highlight that it's mad that they force these kids to go to college.
Absolutely.
And not get paid.
When your career depends on like health and can be taken away like that quickly. Force them to do a year unpaid is just
during March Madness, no less.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, I'll bring us home with someone who does have a good head on his shoulders, and that is Chris Paul. And the reason I picked Chris Paul, isn't because his career ended through injuries. It clearly hasn't. He's still going strong, and is leading the Suns to the second best record in the West right now.
Right now, yeah.
Just a hair behind the Jazz, at an advanced age at that.
The Suns.
The Phoenix Suns, yeah. Yeah, it's been a while, right?
Since Nash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
MVP.
And Chris Paul is someone whose career has been altered by injuries. That's why I went with him. I think he came into the league as a lightning quick point guard.
Yeah.
Actually super athletic. Although he doesn't dunk much, he can dunk, and was dunking in the All-Star game this year and last year, funnily enough. But he's like 6 foot is a generous listing for him in the league.
With shoes.
Exactly. And he was super, super quick when he came into the league. Handles for days, still does. But he had a knee injury which sort of slowed him down. And I think that sort of advanced his mental development in terms of basketball IQ and things like that, thinking the game. There's few in the league that I would say have a higher basketball IQ than him. So he adapted his game a little bit, started to develop a nice mid-range jumper that is absolute water. But he was a player he was kind of an almost player, right? In New Orleans, he couldn't quite compete with the Lakers or the Spurs. And then he went to the Clippers, and they start Lob City. Blake starts to develop. DeAndre starts to develop, and they have a really, really good team that can compete in the West. But it's in the West at a time when Dallas is good, and again the Spurs are good, and
the Lakers,
OKC Thunder,
yeah,
are really good. And no, that was a sad time to be a Lakers fan.
You're right, actually.
It was,
okay, sure.
They kind of caught us with our pants down a few times. There's a couple of those excellent Blake dunks you were talking about that ended up on Pau Gasol's head back then.
And Mozgov, remember?
Yeah, Mozgov getting Mozgoved. That's how he got his name. And it looked like he was finally on a team that was capable of competing for championships. But I want to highlight the 2015 playoffs, where Lob City is really starting to take off. And they are matched up against the San Antonio Spurs, who were coming off a championship the year before, I believe. In the first round at that. And they go toe-to-toe. This is when Blake Griffin is really starting to become a great, great player. And they're going toe-to-toe. It's an excellent series. It ends up going to 7. But I think during game 7, Chris Paul pulls his hamstring. And he leaves the game for a while. He comes back in. He carries on playing and actually ends up hitting the game winner. You guessed it. Mid-range pull-up over Tim Duncan. Sorry, Jose. To win the game. It's not a buzzer beater, but it's like right at the end of the game, and essentially wins the series for them. But now he has a hamstring injury going into the next round, and it's one of those things where he's gotten them this far, but his body's let him down.
Yeah.
And I think they end up losing to, was it Portland that year? I think it was Portland in 2015, who then went on to play the Warriors and get knocked out by them on the way to their first championship. Right. And when you look at it, like, Chris Paul was the best point guard in the league at that point, but then Steph wins his first MVP, and Chris Paul, and the Clippers, who had knocked out the Warriors the previous year, don't get to face them in the playoffs that year. And then the Warriors go on to begin their dynasty. And it's one of those moments where they could have caught them just before they became what they became.
Cool. Yeah.
And had that moment to sort of maybe grab one just before the Warriors just became too much to handle. And it's funny that you had the whole State Farm thing where Chris Paul's going down on the escalator and Steph Curry's going up on the escalator, because that's essentially what happened. And then, so they had a good chance then, because as I said, the Warriors go on to win their first championship. Cleveland ends up being injured in the finals. There's a good chance that if the Clippers can remain healthy, they go through to those finals, face ferocious LeBron on his own, and Mozgov, and potentially have that chance to win a championship. So it doesn't work out for them. I think the next year Blake gets injured. And there's just, that happens every year. Either Chris Paul or Blake is injured in the playoffs, and they never quite get to even a third round, let alone a finals. And then he ends up going to Houston, paired with the best player in the NBA at the time, James Harden. He's asleep.
No, I'm not reacting anymore to any baiting.
MVP James Harden. Not like a Paul George MVP, like a real MVP. And they have the best record in the league, excellent defense, amazing offense, Mike D'Antoni at the helm, and they are going places. They beat who they need to beat in the playoffs. They get to the Western Conference Finals. Is it the Western Conference Finals? Yeah, Western Conference Finals, where they meet the Warriors, and they're going toe-to-toe again. They end up with a 3-1 lead. Is it 3 or 3-2 lead?
I think it was 3-2, but they lost in game 7.
3-2. And in game 5, Chris Paul pulls his hamstring again. I think they're even winning game 5. Yeah, because I think they up 3-1, and then he gets injured in game 5 and they lose game 5, or something like that. It might be the other way around. They were up 2-2 or whatever, and they win game 5, but he gets injured. And yeah, again a hamstring, and again this time he can't even come back to finish the series. Right, it's that bad. He can't play on it. So yeah, the Warriors end up winning game 6 with no Chris Paul to play against them. They win game 7. Houston Rockets are up big, and end up missing a bunch of threes in a row. 33 threes in a row, something ridiculous like that.
Bad.
Yeah.
17, not 33. That would be insane. 17 threes in a row. And the Warriors squeak through in game 7 and act like they would have won anyway. Like it wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. It wasn't an issue. They were never a threat.
They were going down.
But man, again, if Chris Paul doesn't get injured and they go through to face the 2018 Cavs, who were nowhere near as strong as 2015 or any of those other years that they made the finals, Houston has a ring. Chris Paul has a ring. James Harden has a ring. Mike D'Antoni has a ring, and things look very, very different.
I'm gonna go and take a shot. This feels dirty. This feels too dirty for me. I can't.
It's just another one of those injuries that sort of just really could have changed the course of history. Yeah, could have changed the course of history.
For the better, we agree. Yes.
I mean, he might go down as one of the greatest players to never win an MVP or championship.
Or championship, yeah.
Championship for sure. I think it's interesting that we mentioned earlier that you want teams to face full teams with their full roster, right? And think about the Golden State Warriors championships. In 2015,
2015. Kyrie and Love are injured.
There you go. But the following year, they played against the Spurs and Kawhi got injured.
That's where it comes from. Okay, I see.
Hey, hang on. But then Chris Paul gets injured. Like, the Warriors were quite lucky as well.
Winners luck.
And then
winners luck.
they got payback when they played the Raptors, and KD unfortunately got injured, right? But
you go through the history of the NBA championships, and there's always series and always injuries where it's like, well, this team didn't have this player and that team didn't have that player. It's so common. It's so common. It's so rare for a team to be 100%.
It's part of
I guess
winning
it is.
titles.
You just don't really think about that being a part of the equation, do you?
But it is. It's injury management and rest management. It's all part of they're not really the same, but it's all part of how you win a title. You know, luck is part of it. You know, you can be really unlucky and have the roster to win it, and then one player goes missing, and you're not the same ever again. You know.
Yeah. It's there's always that element of luck in terms of, I mean, last year we had Dragic and Bam getting injured, and you can always just go back through and see it. And a lot of the time, some of the I mean, only affects some of us. It's just those are the breaks, and I hope that with the players that we've talked about today, that we're not sitting here in a few months saying, well, the Lakers didn't make it to the finals because of X, or KD was never back to his best after the
KD again.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine.
Jinxed it.
Or Embiid, it's always a shame when these things happen, but someone has to win at the end of the day. Turn injuries off. # turn off the injuries.
Always leave them on in 2K. Always.
Part of the game, mate.
Yeah. Imagine if they made it so that your player could get injured in my career.
Yeah. Can you imagine? You're set for the next 6 months. Can you?
Yeah, just Sims.
Never happened to me.
Maybe there was an older version, but
yeah. Imagine. Just can't go to the park. You can walk around the park if you're lucky.
Hop
with
around.
a limp, make it even slower to travel. Okay, makes me sick.
Yeah.
All right. So we wrap things up there. Stay injury free at home. Please stay injury free at home. Not like me.
Not like me. Oh man, 50% of the roster is injured.
You see?
Oh.
You see? That's why we didn't win a podcast award this month.
Gonna have to carry the team, huh?
Yeah. You guys do the running.
Already did.
Oh, wow.
So, where are we at? What are we doing here? Tom, plug your podcast.
Oh, all right. Sorry, cut me off guard there. Catching up with the nerds. We'll literally, where it says on the tin, you catch up with nerds about anything that is nerdy. You like catching up? You like nerds? Well, you come to see us. We talk video games, we talk movie, we talk TV series, and we no longer talk about WandaVision because that's done and dusted. I don't ever want to watch it ever again. I think that's
it. You're doing Snyder related, or you've done Snyder related
we've done
lately.
Snyder Cut.
The review now.
The review is out as of yesterday or the day before. I can't remember.
I spent like a whole weekend watching that. I've still got an hour left to go.
I've watched it twice already, actually.
I'm about to watch it the second time. Right? Yeah, I'm having a second round.
Second time is better.
Yes, that's what she said. Yeah.
Still haven't started. So yes, check them out. Catching up with the nerds. Jose, screw it. Plug your podcast too.
A Tres Puntas, a Spanish-speaking episode. Episode number 4 coming soon. To a podcast provider platform
near you.
Near you, literally, because it's in your phone. So
I've got one around the corner.
I assume that your phone is near you at all times.
It's not a Blockbusters.
No.
Available at Tesco.
Oh man. And Mike, plug Mike mask wearing.
Yeah. Everybody, don't be dicks.
Don't be dicks.
Wear a mask.
I want to play basketball again.
coming to a court near you.
Hopefully.
So we are the Grit and Grime podcast. Get us on social media at Grit and Grime Pod across all socials. Like, share, review, subscribe to the podcast. Catch us on YouTube as well. Thank you for watching if you're watching. And keep listening if you are listening. This has been the Grit and Grime podcast, and we are going to leave you now. From me, David Sagoe, from Thomas Arnal.
Yo, bye.
Did I point the right way? Jose Garcia Vidal.
Adios.
And from Michael Downey.
Good night.
And we're out of here.